Amherst College has released its Class of 2028 profile. Let's dive into it today. My name is Craig Meister. I'm a college admissions coach. You can learn more about me and how you can work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process on my website, which is collegemeister.com. And if you're interested in learning about whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America, visit areyouontracktogetin.com. Again, that's areyouontracktogetin.com, at which you will complete a free 3-minute assessment. Your results will be emailed to you right away, and they will help you clarify whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America. I do want to, right at the beginning, say that Amherst College is pretty transparent. I'm proud of them. Good job, Amherst College. They write a little note in the beginning of their Class of 2020 profile. Let's read that first. Welcome to Amherst College's admissions and enrollment profile for the Class of 2028. This class is the first admitted to Amherst following last summer's Supreme Court curtailing the kind of whole person review we have done here at Amherst for decades. And while the court's decision changes the law, it does not change our values. Amherst College remains committed to recruiting, enrolling, and supporting a diverse student body in accordance with the law. So what they throw out right in the first paragraph is that we are angry and we're blaming it on the Supreme Court at the profile of our Class of 2028. They are basically saying they can't do the whole person review they used to be able to do because they're no longer able to practice affirmative action. As I keep reading, you'll see in the data below that there are some differences in the demographic makeup for our incoming class. However, we want to emphatically reaffirm that every student who has enrolled at Amherst, past and present, has always earned their place. There's a saying, it's a Shakespearean saying, it comes to mind, doth protest too much. But I digress. While we are privileged and fortunate to have more qualified applicants than we are able to admit and educate within our intentionally small student body, each student is admitted through careful, holistic consideration and with the intention of strengthening the community here at Amherst. As I said last year in my introduction to the Class of 2027, and as we say every year about our enrolling students, while this page may share demographic and statistical information about our newest mammoths, there is so much more to know about who they are, what their lived experiences are, what their hopes, dreams, and passions are, and what contributions they'll make as a part of our community, both at and beyond Amherst. I invite you to read more about the incoming class and their experience of move-in and orientation. I hope you'll join me in my excitement about Class of 2028 and the anticipation of seeing who they learn and grow to be here at Amherst. Yours in education, Matthew L. McGann, ED.D., which is a doctor of education, Dean of Admission and Financial Aid. Did I do my best dramatic interpretation of that? I should really be, probably. I think I was really destined to be like a book on tape reader. I think I'd be good at that. But here we go. Let's look at this in more depth. 15% are first generation college students. Just so you know, last year that number was 18%. 20% are Pell Grant recipients. Last year that number was 18.5%. 38% identify as students of color, U.S. students of color. That's an important distinction because, of course, international students can have color too. And they break this up as such. They say U.S. students of color, 38% in the Class of 2028. Last year, it was 47%. 16% are international this year. Last year, it was 13%. This year, we have 6% are dual citizens of U.S. and another country. Last year was the same number. And this year, we have 53 languages spoken at home. Last year, it was 61. Now, let's look at this. This is sort of the big area that they're upset about at Amherst. The racial and ethnic identity section. American Indian or Alaskan Native is 1%. And what I really like about Amherst, they're breaking it down based off of domestic applicants and all applicants, which is interesting. So again, for American Indian or Alaska Native, that makes sense. That would be purely domestic. 1% of the entering class at Amherst is American Indian or Alaskan Native. Asian American is interesting. I don't quite understand this because 25% are Asian American if you just look at the domestic applicants, but 33% are of the all applicants. So I'm assuming that reads as Asian Americans who are applying from outside of the United States, like at international schools or living abroad. But it could also mean if they had just put a slash between the word Asian and an Asian American, it could also mean Asians from abroad. But I may not mean that because they this year have an international line item here, which could also include Asians from abroad. So I'm assuming this is just like Asians who are Asian American, but who are applying from abroad. But that number is 33% all in. Last year, that number was 32%. Just so you know, American Indian number last year was 2%. So it was cut in half. It started very small. It's now gone to 1%. Asian domestic last year was 26% and all was 32%. So it's gone down by 1% in the domestic area, and it's gone up in one area, 1 percentage point in the all area, so up to 33%. Black or African American. Now this is interesting. Black or African American is stated differently than Asian or Asian American. Black or African American means that they're black, as in their skin color or identified skin color, or they're African American. And so this is definitely inclusive, most likely, of international applicants who have no U.S. residency or citizenship or green card. And also African Americans or blacks who are American, who are living abroad, but who are not currently living in the United States, but who are American. So as you see, for the class of 2028, the domestic versions of this would be 6%. All in, it's 9%. Last year, the number was 15% for domestic and 19% all for all. So that number has been slashed big time. Big time. Again, last year, Black or African American represented 19% of all first year students. This year, it's 9%. That's a big drop. Latinx, as they call it at Amherst, is 10% all in this year. Last year, it was 14%. And white last year was 54%. This year, it's 56%. Did not report this year was 9%. Last year, they didn't even have a did not report. It was less than 4%, I guess. And this year, they are now including international, which is 16%, which I'm assuming is a kaleidoscope of different colors and backgrounds from all around the world. Last year, they did not include that in this list, but they included it elsewhere, as I mentioned earlier. I showed it earlier. So 16%. They're really proud that they have 16% international this year. Last year, they only had 13% international, but they added it to this line item here. Gender identification for the class of 2028 is 53% women, 41% man, and all the rest are either did not report or respond or another gender identity. In terms of those submitting scores, the mean scores this year were 756 on the evidence-based reading and writing of the SAT and 771 on the math. That's mean is sort of a really doesn't tell us much. That just means that 50% are above it, 50% are below it. Last year, it was similar numbers. I mean, not particularly different. And again, Amherst is test optional and remains so at this point. And then they also give some more information about where they're from in the class of 2028 in terms of the types of schools and also the geographic distribution. But long story short, even as a test optional institution, Amherst has seen huge drops in Black and or African American and significant drop with Latinx, as they term it there at Amherst. And there's some other really interesting, juicy numbers here in terms of, again, the high school representation from public, independent, non-religious, religious, and homeschool students. And also some really interesting information here related to the overall number of applicants and so forth. Again, they give a lot of data at Amherst, and they should be commended for the fact that they give as much. Here's the breakdowns of the ACT scores, by the way, compared one year to the next. So again, the Amherst, much more so than some other schools we reviewed so far this cycle that have released their information, is giving much more information. And again, to that, I simply tip my hat to Amherst. Otherwise, other than sort of being in a bad mood in the beginning of that letter, Matthew McGann really is just laying it out there. He's not saying like MIT did last week when we reviewed MIT. He's not saying anything like, oh, we're going to change this or we're going to do that. He's just basically saying this is what it is. We're following the law and this is what it is. Now, they are basically grinning and bearing right now the fact that they did not get the numbers they wanted for certain demographic groups, and they went down quite considerably. And what they're basically intimating is that they feel like that was the right mix of diversity on campus, and now we don't have the right mix of diversity on campus. But everyone who has ever come to Amherst deserved it. But now, because we're no longer able to consider race specifically, individuals can't get in any longer of a certain race at the rates they were getting in. But everyone's deserved it always, and don't feel bad. And we're not going to feel bad. We're going to try our best moving forward. I mean, the whole thing is weird and odd. And I will simply say, I do, again, thank Amherst for sharing this information. But what are we going to do with it at this point? Can we just stop giving our opinions on the ideal demographics of our classes? Maybe that would be great. I know a lot of the colleges are now having neutrality statements as it relates to international or current events. Well, wouldn't it be lovely if colleges had neutrality statements related to the demographics of their class? I don't think that I really need to hear any longer about what the admissions officers think would be the ideal outcome demographically at a particular school. Amherst is closer to that than at least MIT was when we review that information. You can watch the MIT video. I'll link it below. But so they didn't like completely complain as much as they just sort of stated it as what it is, which is, the Supreme Court is tying our hands. That's it. That's basically what they said in Amherst. And they didn't necessarily say they're going to throw more money at the problem or they're going to do things differently in the future. They're just sort of saying, this is how it is. Now, look, it would even be more different, potentially, if they require the SAT or ACT again. I don't see Amherst going back to requiring that to this year at least. Maybe they're doing it in the future, but they're not doing it right now. So they'll probably stay test optional for the time being. Maybe they won't. Who knows? But they have to obviously decide if it's going to change their demographics further in ways they don't want it to change. But as stated in this letter by Dr. McGann, their values have not changed. Their values have not changed, but also they want to follow the law. And clearly the powers that be in that office making the admissions decisions were really hamstrung. Because trust me, they didn't want these numbers. They wanted numbers that were much more similar to numbers in past years of demographics. They were not able to squeeze them out of this year's class of 2028. Let's say you want to go to Amherst and you want to make sure your application to Amherst is in the best position possible to get admitted. You would benefit from my newest product, which is known as my pre-read. When you finish your Common App and you want to know if it's as strong as possible and whether or not in its current condition your chances of admission are impressive, inconclusive, or inadequate, you need my pre-read. Getting my pre-read now means having me review your entire application to Amherst, just like an admissions officer or admissions committee will review it later, and receiving by email, no later than the time you reserve, a comprehensive report highlighting what's working and what's not on your full Common App and your Amherst Common App supplement. If you've yet to submit your Common App to Amherst, my pre-read may motivate you to make adjustments to it before your deadline. If you've already submitted your Common App to Amherst, my pre-read will prepare you for what I deem to be your likely admissions outcome at Amherst College. To learn more about my pre-read and to purchase my pre-read, go to mypreread.com. Again, that's mypreread.com. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process, go to my website, which is collegemeister.com. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and most importantly, stay stress-free throughout the entire college admissions process.